All right. So if you've ever time blocked your calendar and then completely ignored it, this is for you. You keep breaking your own calendar and you plan your week. You block your time. You set your intentions. And then you abandon it all when your state shifts. And this is not just a scheduling issue. It's a system failure rooted in a mismatch between how you plan and how you actually operate. This is a lesson I've been personally learning lately. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I make a lot of content for really myself. And what I found in trying to orchestrate my own schedule is that most popular solutions to time management fail because they make one fundamental assumption that is untrue. And that is that people are consistent. It's that you are consistent. And that your future self will have the same clarity and energy and executive function as the version of you that's doing the planning. And assuming that consistency is really what gets you in trouble. Because the version of you that does the planning rarely shows up. And you know this, and yet you make the assumption that it will anyway. And so this video is about a concept that I've come up with called state resilient time design. And I want to get into that, and I want to get into it as a solution for executive function in time management. State resilient time design is a way to structure your calendar and your workload and your expectations so that they hold under pressure, so that they hold under fatigue, and that they hold under distraction and volatility. This video is really about achieving a system that holds. So one of the things I realized is that most people don't actually have a time problem. They have a self-regulation problem disguised as a time problem. And they build systems really based on how they want to feel. Clear, focused, energized. The calendar looks beautiful. But when that state collapses, that internal state of clarity and focus and organization, when that mental state collapses, the calendar collapses with it. And people label that inconsistency in themselves. They label it procrastination. They label it consistency. They said, I didn't plan enough. I wasn't disciplined enough. I didn't want it enough. I wasn't organized enough. I did something wrong. I time blocked it wrong because when the time block came, I didn't do it. But the truth is, if your calendar only works when you feel good, it's not actually a time system. It's just a performance script. So here are some principles that really change the way I relate to time and change the way I relate to time management in my schedule. So first is that we treat time like a container. So this first principle is that time is not a schedule. Time is not a schedule, right? We're used to thinking of time as a schedule because we look at schedules. So this first principle is that time is not a schedule. Time is an interface. We treat time like a container, but time is an interface, a structured way to interact with identity and with energy and with attention. And when your system breaks, it's not because the tasks were wrong or the project wasn't set up right, or you should be using agile project management or anything like that. When your time system breaks, meaning that you don't follow through, or you get overwhelmed, or something goes wrong so that you don't do what you plan to do, or you struggle to plan at all, it's because the interface required a version of you that didn't show up. Time required a version of you that didn't show up. And most schedules are emotional projections. Most schedules are emotional predictions. You write your calendar as the self you wish would exist. That's the problem. So when the real you actually shows up, and you're fatigued and you're distracted and you're emotionally scrambled and you're overwhelmed, it doesn't map onto the planned self that we thought would show up. And the interface, time itself, fails us because we weren't truthful with it from the beginning. So that's the first concept. Time is not a schedule. It's an interface, and it can reject our input if we're not honest with it. And to be honest with it, we have to plan based on who we really are and how we really might be. We can't assume our best self always showing up. And if our schedule reflects that assumption, that it's always our best self that will be showing up, and if we always plan on being our best self, then the schedule will collapse, and our relationship with time as an interface will corrode and collapse, and it will become riddled with distrust. So, time is not a schedule; it's an interface. Principle number 2: the problem is not the tool, the state assumption. So we talked about this a little bit already, but every time system is really built on state assumptions, right? We're talking about a state-based conception of time design. So assumptions that go into your time system are how much clarity and energy and emotional capacity you'll have when it's time to actually execute. So when you're resourced, you don't notice this. You just do the thing. You actually can afford to take it for granted. But when you're depleted, the gap between plan and self widens very quickly. And there's also an emotional architecture underneath the task list. Every action that you plan to execute carries this invisible weight, this unclear scope, internal pressure, this subtle avoidance. What looks like procrastination is often just emotional dissonance. The task has mass, but no traction. And this is where planning collapses, not from a lack of intention, but from friction at the moment of translation. So you planned one version of yourself, a different one shows up. And you think, man, I really misjudged my energy there. No, you didn't misjudge your energy. You just misjudged the cost of engaging, which means that we have to forecast our energy expenditure more accurately. The third principle is your time system needs resolution management. What does resolution management mean? We've talked about resolution in previous videos. It's every system you use should be able to scale its resolution based on your state. So what do I mean by resolution? I mean, by analogy, like when you look at like a 4K resolution, right? It's high res. You have a lot of detail. Or if you have like a 480 resolution, it's very low res, right? Like when you're streaming something and you have really great internet bandwidth, you can stream it in 4K. And then when for some reason that bandwidth gets interrupted and your internet speed plummets, what happens? The streaming service, it gets all pixelated, right? So high res is where you have, what is high res time management? High res time management is where you have deep work blocks, you have clearly defined outputs, you have intense constraints, right? High res is deep work blocks, clearly defined outputs, intense constraints. What is low res? Low res is where you have loose blocks, very simple action categories, and very minimal decision load. This is called adaptive resolution. It's what prevents collapse. I'm planning to go into a high-res work mode. I am not feeling good right now. I'm actually feeling like distinctively bad. And so I'm actually going to shift this work block into a low-res work block. Instead of avoiding it entirely, I'm going to adapt, right? It gives you a third option between going all in, doing nothing. Is instead of going, I'm either going to go high res work, or I'm going to do no work at all. Instead, it's like we're going low res, right? Resolution is not just about time, it's about clarity, right? So for example, unclear tasks, they generate drag. So vague projects are projects composed of unclear tasks. This generates internal resistance inside of you. Every ambiguous line item on your calendar creates this like micro avoidance, and they all pile up to the point where you have this pile of things you're avoiding, and you can't even wrap your mind around what exactly it is you're avoiding. You just know you don't want to do any of it, and you don't feel like you have the energy to do it, but you can't quite articulate it. And that inability to articulate why you feel so avoidant of the things you know you have to do that each feels so simple on its own, that is the result of this this lack of clarity, right? This kind of like pervasive low res relationship to your time interface. So when I'm scattered or when I'm depleted, I switch to a low res mode, right? When I'm clear and focused, I run my week in like 90-minute blocks with clearly defined deliverables. But again, when I'm emotionally overwhelmed, I switch to that low res mode. You know, I've got these 3 action buckets. I've got the now, I've got the next, I've got the later. And this reduces the emotional cost of engaging. The structure survives, only the fidelity changes. Every system that you use should be able to scale its resolution based on your current state, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about. The 4th principle is to build temporal containers that regulate you. So what does this mean? Build temporal containers that regulate you. Most people try to regulate themselves so they can use time. Recently, I've been doing the opposite with some success. I design blocks of time that regulate me. So I design blocks of time and implement blocks of time in my calendar that hold me inside a rhythm, even when I can't generate one from scratch. So this includes things like daily start anchors. A daily start anchor is a trigger that switches me from passive to active. I have weekly reset rituals. Actually, Saturday mornings for me are these weekly reset rituals where I take kind of a half-day Sabbath. Today is actually Saturday morning, and I'm about to head into that. And then we have another concept called hard session start cues, where you go, okay, I've got a timer, I've got a space, I've got an app that opens to focus state, where I know the what, the where, and the when of what I'm doing, right? So time becomes something I step into, not something I wrestle with, and I use environment design to carry me through that time block, to an end state that counts as done in the execution of that task. The 5th principle that has been really helpful for me with the state-based time design is that I don't use time to manage work. I use my time to manage my identity, fundamentally. And work is something that my identity does. So tasks in my day constantly shift, and this was a source of a lot of emotional volatility for me previously. It still affects me for sure, but much less now, right? When projects evolve by nature, goals mutate by nature. People say, what are your year-end goals? What are your 3-year goals? And there's nothing wrong with having something to aim towards, but most people don't realize that having this idea of a goal will set you up to feel like a failure when you abandon or don't hit that goal, rather than just saying, I'm using it as a compass, right? So time done right is a reflection of who you are in motion. If your time system is built around outputs alone, it will always drift, right? Your system will always be drifting because it's always going to be dependent on the outputs, which are always evolving because the project's always evolving, because the stakeholders in your life and in your time system are always evolving. Because when execution time actually arrives, your energy and your clarity and your self-concept may not match what you planned. So this is the problem of time aversion. You planned it, but when the moment comes, it feels like someone else wrote your script, because it kind of was someone else. It was a you that's not here right now. It's go time, and the you that planned this go time is not here somehow, right? So I don't block time for tasks. I block time for identity expression, right? I've got a builder block, a strategist block, a closer block. When I step into that time, I'm not chasing completion. I'm running code, right? I'm following protocol. I have values. For example, I have a time block where I use David Allen's getting things done system in my life, which I tried to implement like no less than 10 times and failed. And now I'm in a long stretch of having implemented it with some success. And for example, one of his principles is in your task ingestion list, if you have a task that can be done in under 2 minutes, to do it now, which is great. And I do that. But I also have tasks that I can do under 5 minutes. And so I have a block of time devoted to doing those tasks. And it removes like 90% of the task clutter in my life and allows me to more clearly schedule other time blocks for like building or creativity or strategy or rest, when those blocks aren't one of 100, because I've removed most of them, because most tasks can be done fairly quickly. So when I step into that time, I'm not chasing that completion state. I'm just running the algorithm. I'm just executing and according to my method, according to my values. I'm aligning with a known internal state. I block time not for tasks, but for identity. And so the more your time matches who you are, the less resistance you'll feel. Tasks are always changing, right? And so this keeps my calendar meaningful. It keeps my calendar meaningful, even when priorities shift. And it means that the actual digital visual interface of my calendar reflects more accurately my relationship with time as an interface. So the sixth principle is that time doesn't fail. You just never built a return path, right? So very often we feel like, oh, I lost that time. I tried to do this, or I get caught up in a task, or very often I'll have to sit down and work on a project, and I don't know how long that project's going to take, right? And so, and I'll get off track, and I'll feel like very disappointed in myself because I thought I was going to sit down and finish this thing and I didn't. Why didn't that happen? It feels like a planning failure. It feels like a planning failure. But the reason your time system keeps breaking isn't because you're lazy or undisciplined. It's because you never built a return path for when things fall apart. So re-entry into your time system isn't just about technical recovery. It's about emotional reconnection. And it's really difficult to remember this when you're flustered and overwhelmed and the demands of life are bearing down upon you. And it's like, hey, you have to emotionally reconnect with time. It's like, yeah, that's not a priority right now. It's just not. I have to get things done. I have to get things done. Right. But it's like, it's one of those moments where you go, am I going to keep chopping this tree with the dull axe, or am I going to sharpen the right? And it's one of those moments where you go from being a low-level operator to a high-level operator. You say, okay, to maximize my throughput and output from time, I have to stop being in productivity mode, and I have to emotionally reconnect with myself, because time is maximized when it is a forum for my identity expression. And if I am disconnected and disintegrated and dissociated at the identity level, my utilization and effectiveness and efficiency in time will be minimized. And that's the opposite of what I want. Right? So re-entry is not just about technical recovery. It's about emotional reconnection. You want a return path that is automated, that brings you back into your time system, right? Shame creates time drag. Overwhelm clouds direction. It obscures your time system, right? A real return path includes both system friction reduction and identity realignment. So if a single missed day, if you miss a day in your time system, right? Or if you're off of a day, or if you have a whole day planned and you end up just needing to sleep, or you have a whole day planned with doing one thing and you needed to, end up doing something else. Not about saying, oh, that was okay. No. Okay. Maybe it wasn't okay. That's not the point. The point is, when you get off path, you need a way of getting back on path without saying, oh, well, I guess my time system doesn't work. Oh, I guess I'm just not good at time, or, oh, I'll never get it together. The real failure in your time system is not missing a day or missing a task or failing to complete something or failing to comply with what you've planned for yourself. The real failure of your time system is when you get off path and then you get so discouraged that you just abandon it and you get frustrated. That moment where you're like, oh, I guess I'm just not good enough. I guess I'm not good at time. I'll never be good at time. That is the moment you have to stop yourself. That is the moment you have to say, this is actually getting off path, because everybody gets off path. Like, everybody gets pulled out of their time system. Everybody does. The difference between people who are productive and good at time and people who are not is that people who are productive and good at time have a way, an instinct, and an automation to automatically bring them back into their time system. I'm not really a religious person, but there's this great quote from the book of Proverbs that says, a wise man falls down 7 times, but gets back up again. And a fool stumbles in times of calamity, right? That gets back up again. That is hugely important in our relationship with time. I'd say the biggest threat to having a healthy relationship with time, and a planned and organized and disciplined and consistent relationship with time, is our discouragement, is our ability to be discouraged about time. I would say time resilience is the key character trait, is the key personality quality that you need to have a healthy relationship with time, to get knocked out of your time system and be able to be brought back in. So if a single missed day unravels your entire schedule, then you built something fragile. So every system needs a re-entry protocol. How do I come back in? It needs a restart baseline. What's the minimum I can still run? And it also needs a fail-safe. What still executes when I'm completely offline? Okay, so you need that re-entry protocol. How do I come back in? A restart baseline. What's the minimum I can still run? And a fail-safe. What still executes when I'm offline? Right? This is what makes it real. Not consistency, not optimization. It's this concept that we introduced at the beginning. It's called state resilient time design. Built around constraint. Designed for reality, not theory, not idealization. It's state resilient time design. Redundancy, recovery, identity alignment under constraint. The reason your time system keeps breaking is not because you're lazy. It's not because you're undisciplined. It's because you never built that return path for when things fall apart. A time system is not a plan. It's an operating structure. If it only works when you're optimized, it's not a system, and it's not practical, and it really has nothing even to do with time. It's just a performance script. So when you're building your time system, you want to think of it fundamentally as a forum for identity expression that you will get knocked out of and need to be brought back into. And you need to recognize that your personal individual state will vary. And the only time system that will actually work for you is one that incorporates state resilient time design and the architecture of that time system. If you find yourself saying, I got a time block, I got to put the system in place, I got to have this ideal world workflow for how I interface with time, then your relationship with time is always going to be false, right? It's like when you show up on a date and you're not acting like yourself, right? And because you're nervous, or you have this idea that you have to put this ideal self out there. It's the same thing with time, right? We relate to time in a mundane way every day. But then when we start putting our calendar together, we say, oh, I'm going to time block, I'm going to do 90 minutes here. 90. It's like, you don't work that way. You don't do things that way. So schedule and time block your calendar and build a relationship, build a formal, explicit, visual, digital relationship with time that organically relates not only to how you live day to day, but how you see yourself. And make these time blocks for identity expression, and build something that survives the version of you who doesn't feel like doing anything, because that's part of you too. That's when it matters. That's when your time system really will start working for you, when you are willing to show up to the planning phase, assuming the you that shows up to execution may be the lowest version of you, right? And very likely it will be, but that is when you will design the wisest, most practical, and probably most productive time system for you.